My name is Major Diana Asante. I am 38 years old. I have been a counterintelligence officer for 14 years. And on a Monday morning in March, I walked into a training room at Fort Hadley to meet the unit I had been assigned to train and understood within 11 minutes that something was deeply wrong. Not wrong with the unit, wrong with how much they already knew. There were 12 soldiers, all junior, all new to their postings. The briefing I had prepared covered 3 operational scenarios from my service record, standard training material, real operations anonymized and restructured for instructional use. I had prepared it the previous week, alone, on a secured terminal. The material had not been shared with anyone. I put the first scenario on the board. A soldier in the 3rd row said the outcome before I reached it, not approximately. Exactly. The precise result of an operation I had led 4 years ago that had never been formally documented because the circumstances of its conclusion had required a verbal debrief only. A verbal debrief. No written record, no file, nothing that could be accessed through any system. I looked at her. I asked where she had read that. She looked confused. She said she had been briefed by her previous unit commander before transferring here. She said she had assumed it was standard preparation material. I asked who her previous unit commander was. She told me a name. I did not know the name. I finished the session. I gave nothing away. I dismissed the unit at the scheduled time. Then I walked to the nearest secure terminal and I called Colonel Sandra Obi. Let me tell you about the operation first. 4 years ago, a counterintelligence operation in a location I will not name. 6 people involved, including myself. The operation had concluded successfully, but through means that had not been in the original plan. Decisions had been made in the field that could not be fully documented without exposing methods that needed to remain undisclosed. The debrief had been verbal, attended by 3 people, myself, my commanding officer at the time, and 1 other officer whose identity I am not able to include here. 3 people had been in that debrief room. Whatever was said in it had stayed in that room, or so I had believed. The soldier in the 3rd row had described the outcome of that operation with a precision that stopped me cold. Detail that had never been written down. Detail that existed only in the memories of 3 people who had been in a debrief room 4 years ago. The object at the center of everything was my training file, the material I had prepared the previous week, alone, on a secured terminal. I had built the scenarios myself. I had drawn on my own operational history. I had selected 3 operations, all anonymized, all restructured, that I believed would serve the instructional purpose without exposing anything sensitive. The undocumented operation was one of the 3. I had included it because it illustrated a decision-making process I wanted the unit to understand. I had anonymized it, changed the location, the dates, the names, the surface details. But the outcome was the same, because the outcome was the point of the lesson. Private Lily Boadu had recognized the outcome, which meant she had known the operation before I put it on the board, which meant someone had told her. And the only people who could have told her were the 3 people who had been in the debrief room, or someone those 3 people had told. Colonel Sandra Obi answered on the 2nd ring. I gave her the shape of the problem in 5 sentences. New unit, first day. A soldier described the outcome of an undocumented operation. Verbal debrief only. 3 people present 4 years ago. Obi was quiet for 7 seconds. Then she asked whether I had given any indication to the room that the soldier's knowledge was unusual. I said I had not. She said good. She needed 48 hours. She said I should continue the training as scheduled. Deliver every planned session. Note every instance of knowledge that should not exist. Document each one privately on a personal device only. She said, Diana, the training material you prepared. Did you access your operational history files during preparation? I said yes, through the standard secured system. She said, your operational history files were accessed by a secondary credential 11 days ago. The access was logged as routine administrative review. It was not routine. Someone had read my files 11 days before I walked into that training room. And a soldier in the 3rd row had described an operation that had never been written down. Those 2 things were connected. But the connection was not straightforward. because the undocumented operation was not in my files. It had never been written down, which meant the file access had not been the source of what Private Boadu knew, which meant there were two separate problems. I want to pause here, because standing at a secure terminal, understanding that someone had accessed my files, and that separately, a junior soldier had been given knowledge that could only have come from a closed debrief room, is the moment this story became two investigations running simultaneously. If you have ever pulled one thread and found two problems underneath, drop a comment below and subscribe right now, because what Colonel Obi's team found when they traced both threads and how they connected is the part that changes everything. I ran the training for 48 hours as instructed. 3 sessions. I watched. I noted. Private Boadu in the third row was not the only soldier carrying knowledge she should not have had. In the second session, a corporal described a communication method I had developed during a different operation. An improvised method, used once, never recorded. In the third session, a question was asked about a contact I had worked with whose identity had never been documented anywhere. 3 sessions, 3 instances of knowledge that should not exist, all from different soldiers, all attributed to preparation briefings from previous unit commanders. And all the commanders named were names I did not know. Obi called me on Wednesday evening. She had spent 48 hours running both threads simultaneously. The first thread, the file access 11 days before my training assignment. The accessing credential had belonged to a captain in the administrative division named Marcus Tetteh. Her team had traced his access pattern across the previous 6 months. He had accessed the files of 11 counterintelligence officers during that period. Each access had been logged as routine administrative review. None had been flagged at the time. Tetteh was not reading the files for administrative purposes. He was building profiles, operational histories, methods, contacts, the kind of intelligence picture about our own officers that would be valuable to someone outside this institution. He had been passing those profiles to an external contractor operating without authorization. That was the first thread. The second thread, the knowledge in the training room. Obi said, the unit you were assigned to train had been assembled 3 weeks before your assignment. 12 soldiers drawn from 6 different previous postings. Their previous unit commanders were all real, all verifiable, but none of those commanders had briefed them about your operations. The briefings had come through a processing officer whose name appeared in the administrative notes of all 12 soldiers' transfer files. Someone who had handled their paperwork and had access to a separate intelligence channel. That channel ran back to the debrief room. One of the 3 people who had been present 4 years ago had been passing verbal intelligence for 3 years, not through any system, person to person. Everything that had never been written down because it was too sensitive to write down. And here was the part that reframed everything. Obi said, the unit was not assembled to watch what you would reveal unprompted. It was assembled to provoke you into filling gaps. She said, the contractor had Tetteh's digital profiles of your operational history. They had verbal fragments from the debrief source, but there were gaps, details neither source could reach. They needed you to fill those gaps yourself. She said, the plan was to feed the soldiers partial knowledge of your operations and use the training room to draw the rest out of you. Every time a soldier got something slightly wrong, you would instinctively correct it. Every time they demonstrated incomplete knowledge, you would elaborate. That is what a skilled instructor does. That is what a CI officer does in a teaching context. She said, they intended to use your own professionalism against you. I sat with that. She said, it broke because Private Boadu delivered her fragment too completely and too early, before you had said anything at all. If she had been slightly less precise, if she had gotten a detail wrong rather than exactly right, you might have corrected her. And the correction would have been the intelligence they were after. She said, one soldier was too well prepared, and that precision was the mistake that ended everything. I thought about Private Boadu in the third row, saying the outcome before I reached it. I thought about the 11 minutes between her speaking and my call to Colonel Obi. I said, and the third person from the debrief room. Obi said, in custody as of this morning. The investigation ran for 5 months. Captain Marcus Tetteh had been building intelligence profiles on 11 officers over 6 months. The The profiles had been passed to an external private intelligence contractor operating without authorization. The third person from the debrief room had been passing verbal intelligence to the same contractor through a separate channel for 3 years. Not documents, not files, memory, everything that had never been written down. The contractor had been combining both sources and using training assignments to fill the remaining gaps. Diana's assignment had been one of several such operations over 18 months targeting different officers. Tetteh is serving 7 years. The third person from the debrief room is serving 9 years. The contractor was shut down. 3 of its principals face proceedings in the relevant jurisdiction. Private Lily Boadu. She was 22 years old. She had joined because she believed in the work. She had been given preparation material by someone she trusted and had used it in good faith. She was fully cleared. Her record shows nothing adverse. She came to find me after the investigation concluded. She stood in the corridor outside my office and said she was sorry for what had happened in the training room, even though she had not known. I said, "You have nothing to apologize for." She said, "I know, but I am apologizing anyway." She said it with the composure of someone who understands the difference between responsibility and guilt and is choosing to acknowledge one without claiming the other. I told her she was going to be a good officer. She said she intended to be. I believed her. The training file is in the evidence archive now. The 3 scenarios. The anonymized operations. The outcome I had put on the board that a 22-year-old soldier had completed before I reached it. That moment, 11 minutes into a Monday morning, is the moment that started everything. Not because I did anything dramatic. I asked one question, I noted the answer. I finished the session, I made a call. The plan had been elegant. Use the room to draw out what no file could reach. Use my own instinct as an instructor against me. It had one flaw. They had prepared Private Boadu too well, and I had been doing this for 14 years. Here is what a training room and a soldier who knew too much taught me. When something is wrong, note it. Not just the feeling that something is wrong, the detail, the exact words, the name she gave for her previous commander, the knowledge she should not have had, written down privately, immediately, because the detail is everything. The feeling passes, the detail stays. And 14 years of counterintelligence work has taught me that the detail you note in the first 11 minutes is almost always the thread that unravels the rest. Note everything, call the right person, and finish the session. Because the room cannot know what you know until you decide to act on it. And by then, it is already too late for them. Drop a comment and tell me your story. I read every single one. And subscribe. I am here every week with a new story. She asked one question. She noted the answer. She finished the session. That was enough to end it.